The woman had come to attend a housewarming party, but unexpectedly, she was chosen and possessed by a demon.
Turn off the
TV.
When the crowd saw the woman's behavior suddenly change, their expressions instantly turned grave, but since the demon had already appeared, how could it easily let them go? The demon let out an eerie laugh, then made a pact with the crowd. As long as they could spend the night in the house, they could leave safely the next day. Although everyone was filled with fear, they had to agree. But what they didn't know was that from the moment they agreed, an invisible force had quietly clenched them. That night, everyone will be forced to face the most unbearable and regretful moments of their past directly. The house in the dark was deathly silent. What kind of terrifying experience awaited them? Welcome to watch the latest American thriller I Possessed in 2025. At the beginning of the story, a black man held an axe in his hand and came to a villa in the suburbs. Subsequently, continuous screams came from inside the house. Early the next morning, a woman called the police station to report a murder in her home and gave the address of the villa as 100 Crestfield Lane. After experiencing the cruel encounter last night, the woman finally couldn't bear the inner torture and decided to reunite with her family. 4 months later, veteran Ted bought this villa where a murder had occurred and invited friends to celebrate the housewarming. Sister Zoe, as the first visitor, after parking the Jeep steadily, stared at the cross in front of the house with a puzzled expression. When Zoe looked up, she unexpectedly caught a glimpse of a man's figure in the second-floor window. Before she could react, Ted suddenly appeared from behind and startled Zoe. Ted wanted to ask his sister's opinion about the house, but Zoe directly asked about the origin of the cross. Ted downplayed it, saying it was to commemorate a friend, then took Zoe to visit the farm.
I got cows.
I love them.
That's Destro, Lady J, Cobra Commander, and that one right there is Snake Eyes.
It can be seen from this. Ted is a loyal fan of special forces. Then the brother and sister walked into the barn. Ted stared at the scars on her neck, knowing they were caused by her boyfriend Sebastian. Anger surged up in his heart instantly. Zoe hurriedly explained that she had broken up with Sebastian, adding that she could take care of herself, no need for her brother to worry. However, Ted stated firmly that protecting his sister was his responsibility. Moreover, he had made a promise to their parents to always protect her. Subsequently, Ted also apologized to Zoe for missing their parents' funeral. While the two were still immersed in complex emotions, psychologist Buckley appeared, holding a medical kit. He and Ted had once been comrades in arms in the military. Seeing his long-unseen friend, Ted greeted him warmly, before the three could share their recent situations. At this moment, Ted's girlfriend Danny returned to the farm. The four of them walked into Ted's new home together. Buckley looked at the exquisitely decorated house, and couldn't help but praise it repeatedly. After a brief discussion about the party arrangements, everyone went to their respective tasks. Buckley and Danny were in charge of making drinks. During this period, Buckley asked Danny about Ted's recent condition. Danny confessed that Ted seemed normal on the surface, but inwardly he had been struggling in pain. The relationship between them had also deteriorated significantly. Ted was completely like a different person. Danny's voice was laced with worry. As she expressed her desire to learn about Ted's past, Buckley had to tell the truth. It turned out that during a mission, Ted and Buckley were the first to spot the enemy target. Captain Jack beside them had just noticed something unusual, but because Buckley delayed his shot by a second, causing Jack to be shot in the head, this became a lingering shadow for Ted. Danny was worried after learning the truth and went upstairs to comfort Ted. When the two were about to be intimate, the image of Jack's death suddenly flashed before his eyes. Ted abruptly pushed Danny away and ran out of the bathroom. Danny stayed in place, looking confused. It was 8 p.m. Zoe found a vintage radio in the living room. She curiously reached out to turn it on. Unexpectedly, the radio started playing on its own.
Get out.
Zoe frowned and stepped back instinctively, just bumping into Ted behind her. Ted told her it was their father's radio during his lifetime. The brother and sister then talked about the past of their parents. Ted said the radio had broken down long ago. It could only receive a non-English channel, but Zoe felt something was wrong. She said the radio had seemed to be talking to her, and had issued a strange warning. After hearing this, Ted looked at his sister with concern.
Did you already start smoking some of Buckley's weed?
Did someone say Buckley's weed?
When Zoe was deeply speechless about Ted's suspicion, Danny came downstairs. Ted first apologized to Danny for his behavior in the bathroom, then told the others good news. Danny had found a new job. When hearing that Danny was going to work for Sanders Shipping Company, Zoe interrupted the conversation. Because it was her ex-boyfriend Sebastian's company, Danny hadn't informed Ted in advance, which made Ted dissatisfied with this. Danny hurriedly explained that she worked from home and would have no interaction with Sebastian. Zoe didn't argue further. Looking at the somewhat awkward atmosphere, Buckley had to speak up to ease it, proposing that everyone raise a glass to friendship. Suddenly Zoe detected a strange sound. The group immediately fell silent. Ted, with his keen hearing, judged the sound came from the fireplace. As the strongest among them, he had to stand up and go to check, and found a cell phone in the fireplace. The owner of the phone was Zoe herself. The strange sound just now was the exclusive ringtone reminder of her friend Tara, because the call wasn't answered. Tara sent dozens of text messages, but no one could understand the messages from Tara. Buckley used his phone to check and found it was Haitian Creole, which meant forgive and live. The others thought the message had been sent by mistake, only Ted fell into deep thought upon hearing this. At this moment, the doorbell suddenly rang. Outside, there was thunder and lightning at this time. Ted wondered who would visit when heavy rain was approaching. When he opened the door, an old woman appeared outside, claiming to be there to welcome the new neighbors, and specially bringing an apple pie. The old woman walked into the house without being invited. Ted had intended to introduce the new neighbor to the others, but everyone suddenly seemed to be busy. No one paid attention to the uninvited guest. The old woman had to put down the apple pie and take her leave, but just as the old woman was about to go out, she suddenly turned around and said something strange.
Always remember, a trouble shared is a trouble halved.
Ted was still confused and hadn't come to his senses. The last visitor, Tara, finally arrived. The atmosphere in the house became lively again. Zoe hurriedly stepped forward to greet her, explaining that she hadn't answered the phone, but had replied to the text message. But Tara said she knew nothing about sending the text messages. Before they could ask for details, Ted came out of the kitchen, and his shirt seemed to be stained with blood. To avoid misunderstanding, Ted hurriedly explained that the juicer had broken, and he was going out to buy a new one. Ted went upstairs and took off his clothes, hoping to first wash the juice off his hands. The bright red color once again plunged him into panic. As if the blood of his comrade could never be washed away, Ted could only force himself to return to reality. But this matter had already become his inner demon. How could it be so easily eradicated? In a fit of anger, Ted smashed the glass in front of him and relied on the pain to return to reality. Then Ted came to a general store. An old man received him. When learning that Ted lived on Cressfield Lane, the old man kindly warned Ted to be careful. It was said that the house was cursed, but Ted only wanted to buy a juicer. Not caring about the old man's words, the old man had to tell Ted that he could look upstairs. Ted, having received the answer, turned to leave. At this moment, the old man called out to Ted again and warned, "Don't trust anyone, the others are all suspicious." Ted didn't pay attention and turned to go upstairs. To his surprise, there was a doll sitting on a chair in the center of the room. Ted turned on the light to look for the juicer. Just as he turned around, the old woman from before suddenly appeared, holding exactly the juicer Ted needed in her hand. Ted wondered why the old woman was there. The old woman explained that this was her store. Ted didn't ask further upon hearing this, then followed the woman downstairs to pay. At the same time, Zoe and Tara were walking outside. Tara was pleased that Zoe had bravely broken up, but Zoe was confused as to why she couldn't get out of the shadow. Tara knew she had long suffered from her boyfriend's abuse. Wounds couldn't be healed overnight, but she comforted Zoe that everything would pass, and that a new life would be better. Zoe felt a little relieved upon hearing this. Then the two came to the barn, dancing to the passionate music. Before long, Ted also walked into the barn and joined the revelry. Everyone was fully engaged in the fun. To commemorate this moment, after the revelry, they took a group photo together. Afterward, everyone gathered in the living room to watch TV. Due to different interests and programs, the group argued about it, just as they were fighting over the remote control.
Turn off the
TV.
The room instantly fell into darkness. This sudden turn of events made everyone present hurry to their feet, eyeing Zoe on the chair warily. At this moment, her face was ferocious and her eyes empty. Ted carefully stepped forward to check on his sister, despite Danny's attempts to stop him. But before he could touch Zoe's shoulder, he was choked by the neck and lifted into the air by Zoe. Everyone froze in place. Buckley quickly reacted and tried to step forward to stop her, but was easily pushed aside by Zoe. Just as Ted was about to suffocate, Zoe threw him to the ground. Tara hurriedly ran towards the door, but the door wouldn't open for some reason. The room instantly descended into chaos. Zoe sat back on the chair again, warning everyone in the room not to leave. After a fit of maniacal laughter, Zoe fell into calmness. Only then did everyone in the room have time to calm their nerves. Danny suddenly remembered that Tara had apparently taken a paranormal studies course in college, and had intended to ask her about her current situation. But Tara claimed that after attending one class, she dropped the course, because she thought those things were too fake. But Tara still voiced her opinion, saying that Zoe must be possessed by Someone who died in the house. Upon hearing this, Buckley thought it was the house's problem. However, Danny pointed out the key question: why did the demon choose to possess Zoe? Tara claimed that maybe Zoe's heart was more vulnerable, easily erodable by demons. But just as the group hadn't reached a conclusion, Zoe on the chair spoke again.
I want you all to get to know each other better.
We already know each other.
Do you? Why don't you stay the night and get uncomfortable?
And if we don't?
I'll tear our soul apart.
The demon declared, as long as they stayed until 6 a.m., they could stay safe. Ted turned around to discuss countermeasures with others, but suddenly found that Buckley was gone. Ted knew Buckley's temper all too well, and immediately chased after him, only to find Buckley trying to escape in the garage as expected. But in order to save his sister, Ted didn't dare to take risks, finally succeeded in persuading Buckley to stay. The two returned to the living room with a rope, cautiously approached Zoe, successfully tied her to the chair. After that, Danny and Tara went to the bedroom. As the house lost power, Tara had to light candles for illumination. At this moment, Danny voiced the doubt in her heart. She knew that Tara was clear about the truth. Given the situation, Tara no longer hid and said the thing controlling Zoe had also prepared something for the others in the house. It was playing a perverted game, and the final survivor of the game might be only Tara. Danny was deeply shocked upon hearing this, left under the pretext of going to the bathroom. As soon as Danny left, Tara unexpectedly found that in the corner of the house, there was a rocking chair that kept rocking. When Danny approached, she realized there was actually a doll on the rocking chair. Danny reached out and stopped the rocking chair from shaking. At the same time, Buckley was guarding Zoe in the living room. Being left alone, he became the first target of the demon's invasion. The demon claimed to have known his secret, but Buckley didn't believe it and stepped forward. Ted rushed over upon hearing the strange noise. At this moment, the demon mentioned the doctor-patient confidentiality agreement. Upon hearing this, Buckley wanted to step forward again, but was stopped by Ted, saying that the demon was disturbing his mind. Buckley had to go to the next room to calm down. At this moment, the bathroom door suddenly locked. Danny hurriedly called out to Tara in the room, completely unaware of Zoe appearing behind her, and Tara in the house seemed to hear her daughter's call. Following the sound, she came to a cabinet. Opening it, she found a tiny embryo inside. Tara recalled her abortion experience, suddenly falling into endless self-blame. Fortunately, Danny opened the door in time, came to Tara's side to comfort her, and asked what had happened. Tara didn't tell Danny what she had just seen, only saying that she had seen Zoe. Danny felt confused upon hearing this. At this moment, Buckley went to the room and used his phone to find the news report about the homicide case on Crestfield Lane all those years ago. When Barkley scrolled down and saw the crime tool with bloodstains on it, his phone suddenly received an anonymous text message. The content was, "I know your secret." A sense of unease welled up instantly. To solve the doubts in her heart, Tara went downstairs and distracted Ted. Wanting to talk to the demon alone, Ted went upstairs to search for medicine, trying to keep himself awake, but he was already having hallucinations at this point. The deceased Jack appeared again. Ted didn't pay attention at first, but then he noticed something unusual in the bathroom. A burly man suddenly rushed out of the bathroom, restraining Ted. At this moment, Ted was deeply immersed in hallucinations. He picked up a vase and smashed it. The pain made Ted regain consciousness temporarily. Danny also came to check upon hearing the sound. Facing his girlfriend's concern, Ted said he had accidentally hit the counter. Then Ted took out a shotgun, wanting to go downstairs to kill the demon. Danny hurriedly stepped forward to stop him. However, at this moment, Tara was guarding Zoe alone. Suddenly, Zoe kept torturing Tara with a girl's voice. Tara couldn't bear it anymore and slapped her. And this scene was exactly seen by Ted, who was coming downstairs. The secret buried deep in her heart couldn't be spoken. Tara didn't know how to explain. At this time, Buckley also returned to the living room, angrily accusing the demon of teasing innocent people.
No one's innocent. Secrets. So many secrets.
A rapid knock on the door sounded. It was only 3 a.m. Who could be coming? Ted raised his gun and went to check, only to find out that the person coming was Sebastian. But anyone who entered the house could not leave. Ted didn't want to involve others anymore. He opened the door to send Sebastian away, but Sebastian declared he wanted to talk to Danny and barged in. The moment he entered, he noticed Zoe's abnormality. He stepped forward in confusion. Frightened, Sebastian tried to leave, but Ted remembered the demon's pact. If anyone left, Zoe would be in mortal danger, so Ted held his gun at the door. The others hurried to plead with him, but Sebastian was determined to leave. Ted had to pull the trigger. After firing the shot, Ted returned to the bedroom. At this moment, he hallucinated again. Ted wasn't sure if he had done the right thing. He could have tied up Sebastian, instead of shooting him and causing injury. Jack, standing beside him, thought protecting Zoe was the top priority. Just as Ted was deep in conflict, Zoe unexpectedly entered the room. Looking at his sister who had returned to normal, Ted had intended to take her away, but he unexpectedly learned the truth about their parents' death. It turned out that Zoe was responsible for it all. She had fallen asleep while drunk driving, causing the car accident. Ted was deeply shocked upon hearing this, but he considered it an accident, so he chose to forgive Zoe. Just as the two were preparing to leave again,
mission hasn't changed. Protect Zoe at all cost.
obviously, Ted is now completely controlled by his inner demons. At this moment, Tara returned to the room and intended to call for help. A crow suddenly crashed into the glass and died. Tara hallucinated again, as if she had returned to the operating table, helplessly watching a life being removed from her body. Tara seemed to feel the pain. Crouching on the ground with her hands over her stomach, the voice of a girl kept echoing in her ears, demanding why Tara didn't want her. Tara could only keep apologizing. Suddenly, Tara stood up and found that the demon had possessed the girl, immediately opened the window and tried to climb out. Fortunately, she was promptly stopped. At the same time, downstairs, Sebastian was already on the verge of death. Before his death, he confessed his sins. It turned out that Sebastian had a one-night stand with Danny. Now Danny was pregnant. Sebastian wanted to beg Danny to keep the baby. Upon hearing this, Ted realized he had been deceived. But he didn't have a violent reaction. Instead, he picked up a bottle of wine and went to the bedroom. At this moment, Jack's figure appeared again. It turned out that Ted didn't care about Danny's betrayal. In fact, he didn't love Danny either.
I wanted to find you. I'm lost without you. I love you. I've only ever loved you.
Look at me. Look at me. I'm right here and I'm not going anywhere. I'll wait for you. I always love you.
Ted, having received reassurance, became even more firm in his beliefs. Downstairs at this moment, Buckley wanted to take Danny and leave first, but Danny was still worried about the others in the house. Barkley had to inform Danny of the tragedy that had occurred in the house before. Since the tragic incident that occurred last year, a young woman killed her parents and her daughter before committing suicide. People have called it the Creole curse. It originated in the 1960s. The male owner of the house was a criminal prosecutor. He tampered with evidence in a murder case, framed an innocent boy for the murder charge. The boy was silenced just a few days after being imprisoned, so the boy's father, a Creole, came to the outside of this house late at night, brutally killed the criminal. Prosecutor and his wife finally committed suicide inside the house. After hearing Buckley's account, Danny immediately agreed to leave with him, but the two couldn't leave Tara behind. Buckley had to ask Danny to wait here. He went upstairs to look for Tara. Unexpectedly, as soon as Buckley left, the radio in the house started playing again. Danny stepped forward to check the situation. The Creole had quietly appeared behind her. Buckley came upstairs, opened the door and only saw the cell phone left on the ground. Before he could make sense of the phone's content, Buckley was knocked unconscious by the Creole. When Barkley woke up again, he found himself tied to a chair. Ted was sitting opposite him. Zoe was his only family now. Ted didn't want her to be harmed in the slightest, so he couldn't let Buckley leave. Ted confessed to Buckley that he knew everyone had inner demons.
There's a reason for all of us being here tonight. To cleanse our souls and release our demons.
Buckley looked confused upon hearing this. At this moment, Ted revealed Buckley's inner demon. It turned out that Buckley hadn't fired his gun in that war back then, which led to Jack being shot first by the enemy. Buckley said he couldn't shoot a child. However, the demon beside them suddenly spoke up and said,
Where you could fuck one.
Ted was deeply shocked upon hearing this. In fact, Buckley's inner demon turned out to be about a girl. Facing Ted's questioning, Buckley vehemently denied having done it. At this moment, Ted's inner demon struck again. He actually saw his lover Jack and his deceased parents. Watching Ted's strange reaction, Buckley realized that Ted was also controlled by the demon. It was Ted who had knocked him out, but Ted refused to admit it, claiming he had seen it with his own eyes. All this was done by the Creole. Buckley said Ted was the Creole himself, but Ted wouldn't believe it. To prove his words, he wanted the old man from the grocery store to testify, but it was all his own orchestration. Then Ted mentioned the old woman who gave the apple pie, and said that several people had seen her before, so this shouldn't be fake, right?
Pie! There's no fucking pie! There's no old woman! We never met any neighbor!
When Buckley noticed two fresh scars on Ted's wrist, drawing on years of companionship experience, Buckley knew that every time Ted killed someone, he would record the pain in this way. Obviously, Danny and Tara had already met with misfortune. At this moment, through recollection, Ted also recalled his own actions. It was indeed he who killed Danny and Tara. Buckley became emotional upon hearing this, shouting and begging Ted to spare him. But Ted was already controlled by the demon. He picked up an axe and ended Buckley's life. When Ted came to his senses, thinking it was all over, the demon would spare Zoe. But when he stepped forward to feel Zoe's neck, he found she had long lost vital signs. Ted collapsed to his knees and wept bitterly, then picked up the phone to call the police, saying a homicide had occurred on Crestfield Lane, and everyone in the house was dead, then sat back in the chair and ended his own life. Little did he know that, when the clock struck 6, Zoe on the chair actually came back to life. The story ends here. The film I Possessed is more than just a simple horror movie. It is more like a deep exploration of the soul. The Demon's Pact, as a symbol, represents the various temptations and challenges that people face in life. The plot progression is even more gripping. The protagonists gradually discover that the demons they are fighting may not come from outside, but lurk deep within everyone's heart. Past mistakes, unspeakable secrets, unbearable regrets, like awakened demons, emerging one by one. Every character on this night was tortured by their own inner darkness. They fled around the house, trying to escape the pursuit of their inner demons, but found that no matter where they hid, the shadowy darkness always followed closely. In this trial of the soul, the film, through the protagonist's experiences on this night, puts forward a profound question. When we face our inner demons directly, do we have the courage to face and overcome them? Well, that's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching. Your likes, comments, and follows are the best encouragement for us. See you next time.